Well, hello, friends. Welcome to Tech with Travis, and thanks for joining us today.
You have probably seen the headlines. Gartner says enterprise AI is falling short. McKinsey says most deployments are not delivering value. IBM put out a report saying the failure rate is climbing. And here's the thing. They are all right. But none of them are telling you why. It is not the models. The models are incredible right now. The problem is the architecture underneath them. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. I am Travis Burmaster. Today, we are going to break down exactly what is going wrong and what the companies that are actually winning are doing differently. Let's get into it. Let me paint you a picture. It is 3 a.m. A system alert fires. An artificial intelligence agent, one that had access to all the right data, just approved a duplicate emergency housing claim. Then another one. Then another. Here is what makes this story so unsettling. The agent did not hallucinate. It did not crash. Every single piece of data it used was accurate, and it still made decisions that were completely wrong. That is not an AI problem. That is an architecture problem. The model was not broken. The foundation it was sitting on was. So what exactly is going wrong? The first problem is something I call the flat memory trap. Almost every enterprise AI system today uses RAG, which stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. And RAG is genuinely useful, but it has a blind spot that most teams do not discover until they are already in production. RAG is great at finding similar words. It is terrible at finding similar meaning. Think about what that looks like in practice. The AI sees a data record, it sees a shipment, it sees a supplier violation, 3 separate pieces of information, all technically in context, but the AI has no idea they are connected. It does not know that the supplier violation makes the shipment high risk, which affects the customer claim. It has all the puzzle pieces, but nobody gave it the picture on the box. So what do developers do when they discover this? They do what any reasonable engineer would do. They try to put the missing context into the prompt, and it works for a while. But then the business gets more complex, more rules, more edge cases, more exceptions, and the prompt starts to grow. It goes from 3 lines to 300, then 3,000. Before long, one complex query is triggering 50 or more separate LLM calls just to assemble enough context to answer it. At any real scale, that adds up to $4,000 or $5,000 a month in API costs for a single recurring question. And here is the real problem. You are no longer building an AI system. You are maintaining an enormous, fragile, expensive context machine. That is not where you want to be. Now here's where it really gets painful, because most enterprises do not have one intelligent agent. They have dozens, a sales agent, a finance agent, a compliance agent. Each one was built by a different team, trained slightly differently, making slightly different assumptions, and they all use the same words to mean completely different things. When sales says customer, they mean a paying account. When support says customer, they mean anyone who ever opened a ticket. When finance says customer, they mean a billing record. None of them are wrong, but they are completely incompatible. When these agents try to work together, they are talking past each other. You get contradictions, you get cascading errors, you get the kind of decisions that wake someone up at 3 a.m. Here is the thing. This is a solved problem, just not in AI. Enterprise software has been dealing with this exact challenge for decades. And the systems that work, the ones that run banks and hospitals and logistics networks, they do not just store data. They formally model the business. That is what an ontology is. It is a machine-readable map of your business. What is a customer? What is an order? How do they relate to each other? What rules govern them? When you have that, suddenly every agent in your system is working from the same definition of reality. One model, one language, no ambiguity. The picture on the box, finally. Now let me show you what this actually does to your numbers, because this is the part that tends to get people's attention. With RAG, a single complex business question might trigger 50 or more LLM calls. There is no management layer. Every answer is probabilistic. You cannot audit it or explain it. With an ontology layer, you make one precise call. The answer is always consistent. And you have a complete audit trail because the query itself is the explanation. 50 calls versus 1. No management versus fully managed. I have seen this number end budget debates in boardrooms in about 30 seconds. So now you know what the problems are. The question is, what do you actually build? The answer is a 4-layer architecture, and it is simpler than it sounds. The foundation is OpenClaw. Think of it as the operating system for your agents, open source, self-hosted. You own it completely. On top of that sits Claude from Anthropic. This is where the reasoning happens. It is SOC 2 compliant, HIPAA eligible, and it never trains on your data. That matters a lot in enterprise. Then you add MCP, the Model Context Protocol. This is what lets your agents talk to the tools you already have, your CRM, your ticketing system, your workspace, all of it through one standard interface. And tying it all together at the bottom is the ontology, the formal business model that makes every layer coherent. 4 layers. You can have this in production in a matter of weeks. One of the first questions I always get from enterprise teams is about security, and it is a fair one, because the old story on intelligent agents was that you had to choose between capability and control. Give the agent access to everything it needs and accept the risk, or lock it down so much that it cannot do anything useful. This architecture changes that story completely. The data never leaves your environment. It runs in your VPC on your infrastructure. You define exactly what each agent is allowed to touch by role. Every action is logged and traceable. Anthropic guarantees your data is never used to train the model. You are not trading security for capability anymore. You get both. Let us talk about what this actually costs, because the numbers are pretty striking. All in, we are talking about roughly $100 per employee per month. That covers the Claude API, OpenClaw, which is open source and free, an open source LLM option, and MCP setup, which is a one-time cost. Now compare that to what you get back. The average knowledge worker wastes about 2.5 hours a day on tasks this architecture automates. At $50 an hour, over a full working year, that is over $31,000 per employee. At just 10% efficiency, you are looking at a 15-to-1 return, and compare it to the alternatives. Microsoft Copilot locks you into their ecosystem. Salesforce Einstein locks you into Salesforce. The OpenStack gives you the same capability, and you own it entirely. So how do you actually get started? Because I know the temptation is to try to do everything at once, and that is usually where these projects fall apart. Here is what works. Week 1, just audit. Do not build anything yet. Figure out where your current agents are failing and what your RAG queries are actually costing you. Most teams find numbers they were not expecting. Week 2, map. Pick one business concept, just one workflow, and model it properly. This is where you build the ontology. Week 3, connect. Take one agent and wire it to the ontology layer. Measure the difference. This is what builds your internal business case. Week 4, Expand from there. Add connectors. Roll out to one department. Let the results speak. 4 weeks to a working proof of concept. That is achievable. Here is the bottom line. Enterprise AI is not failing because the models are not good enough. It is failing because the architecture underneath them does not model the business. The companies that get this right first are going to have a real advantage, not just because their AI will work better, but because it will scale in a way that their competitors cannot easily replicate. The stack exists today. The tools are ready. The only question is who moves first. If you want to talk about what this looks like for your organization, come find us at burmester.com. And if this was useful, subscribe. We do this every week. I will see you in the next one.